All right. Thank you, folks, for joining us today. This is Rich and Maikel with Mainline Executive Coaching. And we've got an interesting podcast to share with you today. All right. So let's get to it. This is about ruthless leaders. We've all had them, we've all experienced them, we all know what they're like. We all walked away probably a little beat up and bruised and from these kinds of people. And sometimes we don't see it, and other times we have kind of seen it, but we hope it will be different. But the main thing probably is to be aware of that these people are out there, and they're probably out there a lot more than we might think they are. You were just sharing some statistics with us, Rich. What about these people?
It's interesting. I got to tell you, how many of us have watched these movies, the Hollywood glorification of ruthless leaders, ruthless leadership. And I'm not talking about, political leaders or dictatorship. I'm talking about simple business leaders. And we see all these shows, but what are they glorifying? Are they really talking about, like you said, somebody else? They're really making this movie about someone in real life. Who knows? Who knows? But here's the interesting statistics. One in five of these leaders that we talk about being ruthless or overbearing or whatever have psychopathic tendencies. And that's an interesting thought. I was just talking to my son, right before this podcast. He lives back east. I'm out here in the west, and we were talking. I told him, to watch this podcast today. This is what we were going to watch, and he actually mentioned something very similar, that some of these ruthless leaders have some of the same characteristics, proven characteristics, as serial killers.
That's it.
I don't know how real that is.
If there's somebody who's a psychopath,
yeah.
They're like in the next room plotting how they're going to kill you.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking about it really seriously, because in their mind, you are such a threat that it's either you or them, and it's always going to be them taking care of them.
There's some of the signs of these ruthless leaders are they crave validation and want to be the center of the world, everything around them. They crave recognition from others. They tend to be very self-centered, narcissistic. They have high levels of entitlement. And how often we talked about entitlement as being one of those things that really is detrimental to an organization or a business, especially in senior leadership capacities.
Yeah, it's blinding. It really is. I've got a client that has been talking to me about her boss, and what you're describing there, those traits, that's that person. That is that person. Exactly. Very entitled, always has to be right. Started out like, just effusive, but we're so glad you're here, and praising them and bringing them in. It's like, a spider. Let me bring you in so that I can bite you. And she has very little tolerance for any kind of criticism, anything that might be suggested that they can do to improve, what they're doing there in the culture with their clients. If it doesn't line up with what she wants, what it is that she says, she sees that person as a real threat. And if you get on her list, if you get on the wrong list with her, man, she can be nasty. She can just really just take you to them. And that's the hard thing about it, is sometimes we put ourselves in position where we create this connection with somebody that we're hoping to have a good relationship with, a working relationship, and it turns ugly. And it can be very, very stressful for those individuals. And they think they can fix it. They hope that it will get better. They hope that somehow the boss will see them for the great person, the great employee they are. And you know what? They are not. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll get visited by three spirits overnight.
Maybe.
Bosses, and they'll have a new awakening in the morning. Who knows? But let me ask you this, Maikel: is ruthless leadership the same as being ruthless in business?
You know, when you take a look at it, you must have something in mind to ask that question. Ruthless is this sense of relentlessness, doing whatever it is that has to be done to get the results that you want. The ends justifies the means.
Right.
Uh, Being ruthless in business, um, it's there are no rules. There are no rules to get what it is that you want. As a ruthless leader, there might be a slightly different focus rather than whatever it is I have to do to get you, my employees, to do what it is I want you to do. I will do that, even to the point if that means I've got to get rid of you. I have to give you become the example for everybody else. So the quality of ruthlessness, I don't know, seems like it'd be kind of hard to set. You know what it would be? If you are one of those people that's really in the in group and you have to do something really, 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 really horrible to get on the outside. I'm thinking of like The Godfather, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Thinking of that, you have to really do something horrible to get once you're inside. Family stuff. Um, if it's that case, you're going to protect your own. There's that sense of I'll keep protecting you and protecting you until at some point. So that may for those people, they may be ruthless in their business, but not necessarily ruthless to everyone.
Right. I think there is a relentless pursuit of excellence. Maybe a ruthless pursuit of excellence. I don't know if that's probably not the same as ruthless leadership.
Mhm.
But when we talk about being relentless, like you said, relentless in our drive to improve ourselves, relentless in our drive to get to the next level, or relentless in our drive to make our organization successful. I think there's definitely a difference, and it's all how it's done. Is there a definite drive to make your organization successful without having to step on those around you to get to that next level, or get yourself surrounded by your personal posse? I suppose I guess
The
you could
difference
call
is this. Here's the difference, I think. The difference is relentless and ruthless is that the ruthless may have a level of hostility and adversary about it, where relentless, maybe not. Maybe it's just very strong, being persistent, persevering, just going after it again and again. But there's no hostility in it. Once you get a hostility into it, then it's one of those things that's, again, you or me. Which one? It's always going to be me. That may be the distinction.
right. Here's the thing about business today is it is in a constant state of change. And it cannot be about one person. It cannot be about one philosophy, but it does have to be about a vision that is the vision for the organization, the mission, the purpose. And focusing in on those areas is what's going to make you successful. But here's the thing, and we talked about this: 75% of all organizations fail leadership change. They fail, which means they eventually go down the road to bankruptcy or they fail entirely. Now, why is that? Could that be in some way related to ruthless leadership, about not wanting to really expand your horizons and allow others in?
Ruthless people eventually, because of the nature of who they are, they'll start out with, if there's a sense of abundance when they start with their business, they'll share that abundance with others to some degree. But once things start moving in, caving in, falling apart, the business becomes cannibalistic.
Yeah.
They'll start eating their own. They just will, until finally they devour it all. That kind of dynamic eventually, sooner or later, implodes of its own kind of self-destructive behavior. Now, there may be some organizations that we know that have a lot of resources so that they can keep going on for quite a while. But the body count is really horrible. It's just a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if you got the resources to keep it going, you can keep going for a while. But eventually,
I gotta give you an example. without mentioning names, and we're not going to mention names or businesses in this podcast. We're just talking about examples and things we've seen. So in an interview that I had a while back, I was interviewing with the senior vice president and a COO. And these guys came in to the interview looking like they'd both been rode hard and put away wet. They looked rough. I mean, they looked like they hadn't slept. Neither one of them, they both looked like they'd had a hard time. Okay. And they came in and we started talking, and in walked this individual who I was introduced later on as the CEO of the organization. Now, this organization had been started with a family-started business and been passed on down to the son.
There's your first clue.
Okay, passed on down to the son. Now, this guy
comes in bad, or they're just saying there's a red flag, right?
Entitlement, and a very successful organization. Okay. Now, we were in the middle of this interview talking, and this guy walks into the room and tells this senior vice president, "Sorry, but you've got to end the interview now. I need to talk to you right this minute." And the guy, he goes, "Well, can I wait a few minutes, so we can finish up here?" And he says, "Absolutely not." He says, "I want to talk to you right now." And I think I talked to you about this before. And this guy was, incredibly entitled. Obviously, his office had a big glass window so everybody could see all the accoutrements and niceness in his office. He was dressed really well, and here's his COO and senior vice president that seriously looked, like I said, rode hard, put away wet. Okay. And the look on this guy's face when he said, "I'm sorry, I've got to, I've got to go, and this other guy can finish for you, talking to you, and we'll talk again," was just one of absolute defeat. Absolute defeat. And here's the thing, and I got to tell you, one of my first things I look at when I go into a business, all right, about the culture of the organization and how, and this just kind of proved it for me, honestly. But when you walk into that front lobby of any company, any organization, that's going to give you an instant clue on what the place is going to be like. When I walked in the front lobby, and this is a very successful business, okay? There was no receptionist. Someone come down the hall and said, "Okay, we'll be with you in just a little bit." There were magazines around, but nothing kind of organized. There was a janitor's cart that was pushed in back behind the receptionist desk, the mops and brooms and stuff like that. And in front of the receptionist desk were several boxes from UPS that had just been dropped there and looked like no one had picked them up for a while. Now, so this is my first impression of this company walking into the lobby. And, we walked into a business the other day and we had an interesting, what's this place like? What is it really like? Look around you. That's really an indication of what this organization is about. What's on their walls, what's on their desk, what's on their front area, what reading materials are, how is it decorated? Is it organized? How are you greeted? And there was nobody. But when these two guys came into the interview looking like they did, and the CEO came in and said, "Now, I want you now." And, with the glass wall, it didn't look like a super friendly conversation, because it was right there. You could see it. So just my indication, you can tell. How do the people look in the company? Are they happy? What's it like?
Somehow, if you're really tuned in, listen to those instincts.
Yeah.
There's something wrong. There's something off. There's just something about it when you're going in to interview. Because I'll tell you, the other side of that is, if you don't listen to those instincts, those red flags. I've talked to those people who've been through those grist mills, you might say, right? I said, "When did you figure out this is probably not a good place for you?" "Oh, I remembered, shortly after I was hired." Or I remembered at this point in time, I remembered a number of times I was saying, this is not a good place for me. And yet they kept going. They kept staying there. And the longer they stayed there, the more they were ground down, worn down, torn down, the longer it went. And they kept lying to themselves, if I could just stay here a little longer, make a little bit more money, just hang in there till it finally I find something else like that. But it doesn't happen very often. Usually in the end, they're kicked to the curb and they think, what happened to me? Why did that? And what you want to understand about that in terms of leadership and relationship with employees, I'm going to tell you folks, it takes a while to recover from that. That is not going to go away quickly. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder in that kind of relationship with that kind of a boss. Mm-hmm. So the sooner you recognize it, the sooner you get out of it, the sooner you stop the damage, the sooner you start plugging up those holes that are just draining you and beating you up. That's the real reality of what's going on with this relentless or ruthless leader stuff. They're just not worth it, because when you get down to the facts, here's the facts. They don't care about you. That's it. They don't care about you. If anything, if you are on their radar, it's going to be, well, what can I get them to do for me today? And if you're not responding, kind of like what you're talking about right now, we're going. That kind of guy. If you're not on their radar in terms of how they can use you, they're in the other room. They're thinking about, how do I get rid of you? How do I make you look bad? How do I make you feel so discouraged, so awful that you'll leave on your own, that you'll quit? That way I don't have to play any kind of employee insurance and all that kind of stuff. Don't have to do that, because they don't care. They never did care. They never will care. It's who they are. So the sooner you see that, get out.
And I gotta jump in here, Maikel, because what you're saying, I want everybody who's listening to us or going to listen to this podcast to understand one thing. Both you and I have been job coaches for quite a while. That's another side to who we are. As a matter of fact, that's how we met, doing that. And both of us have talked with a lot of people that from executive positions, all the way down. A lot of our focus have been with, professional level, executive level individuals. And we hear this a lot. We see people coming in, trying to figure out how to get back in the workforce, who hung on like that for years, hung on and hung on and hung on, hoping for the best, and eventually were let go, and they're absolutely defeated. Absolutely defeated. The good thing is we've seen a lot of them turn that around and become very successful again. But the thing is, we hear this story a lot. We hear it. We see it. We see, and there's always two sides to every story. There really is. Mm-hmm. But we see this defeated instance in a lot of these people we work with. So,
yeah, if you make the distinction between the relentless and the ruthless leader, and fundamentally, I do think I'm right when I say the one has hostility. There's a hostility and an aggressiveness and an indifference about these people, as opposed to one highly committed, very much in action about it. And even when they are relentless, you still may not be a good fit for them. You may not be that person just go after the challenge, let's do it, whatever. You may not be that kind of a person in terms of your energy and your capacities. But those ruthless leaders, so it's not you. I always hear that. Maybe if I did this, maybe if I did that, because I'll tell you what, these ruthless leaders, every once in a while, will have a pretty good insight about who you are and what you're doing. They can just really target it, say, well, here's what you need to fix. And because of their paranoia, and they're freaking paranoids, let's be aware about that.
Yeah.
They are freaking paranoids. Because of that condition, they are hyper vigilant in their ability to see what's going on, pick out, your weaknesses, your problems, and then give you some feedback, and they'll feel like it's helpful. But the cost, the cost is high.
The cost is high. Human cost is high. Absolutely, turnover cost.
Well, they're not looking at it that way because they don't care.
They don't care. But so let me ask you this: is there hope for ruthless leaders? Is there a way to change that? Is there a way to help them?
No. Until they become aware of what they're really doing. And it's almost impossible for them to become aware of it because they have almost a complete inability to self-reflect and see what they're doing, how they're affecting other people. I'm telling you, that's just the way it is. Until something happens. And it usually is the kind of thing where what happens to them is it just isn't working anymore. It's, I can't get this, I can't do this. That they start going, I'm just, everywhere I go now, there's just pain, 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 pain. They still don't think it's them. But then you get a good therapist working with them and say, well, maybe we need to take a look at some different kinds of tools, start helping you out to get different results. But very rarely do they actually say, yeah, the problem is over here. They always think it's out there. So you have to deal with them in a different way. But usually takes a lot of pain before they'll even start looking in that direction. And most of them have a high tolerance to pain. So I say get out as soon as you can.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Very interesting subject. And this was episode 2.
But there is hope.
Leadership Insights. There is hope. Absolutely, there is hope.
There's people out there, and there's good jobs out there.
Absolutely.
Now, you got a lot of options. If you're a good person, work hard and really care, and you have some innate abilities to just be conscientious and diligent and work hard, create relationships, work with other people, love to learn. Boy, there's lots of opportunity right now because there's so many people just don't want to pick it back up and go back to work. There's a lot of great people out there and great places to work. So if you look at it that way, there is a lot of hope.
Absolutely. Well, how would a coach, how could we help? How could we help that situation?
Well, it starts with leaders who really care and who want to be different, who recognize they're not getting, they recognize that their culture, their environment, their workplace is not performing to the level that they like. And at some level they say, hey, you know what, the buck stops here. What is it that I need to do to start making changes? Because if I think it's them, I have no control over them other than to lie to them, manipulate them, deceive them, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I can motivate them, but you're already probably doing what you can to motivate them. So it starts with you. How do you get a different perspective about who you are as a leader and your ability to bring out the best? In other words, make the contribution and then bring out the best in other people through encouragement and gratitude, inspiration, vision, working along, getting to know how to work with your people and getting to know who they are. It's what I meant to say. Until you get that change, it's not going to happen because you are the person. You are the source of all change in your organization.
Excellent. I got to say this, that eventually all of us end up in the same place. We do. So how are you going to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want your legacy to fulfill itself? So just some good questions to ask yourself, because eventually that's all you have left. So if that's something that's important to you, take a deep look inside. Once again, thank you for joining us on Mainline Executive Coaching ACT. And if you have any questions for us, comments, go to our website, executiveleadersactilec.com. And once again, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Take care.